Good
evening. We'd like to welcome you this evening, July 1st at 8 p.m. to the Grayson Network. Tonight, we are joined by our panelists, Derrick Grayson and Miss Josie Cruz, both of them running for federal office. Mr. Grayson running for the United States Senate to represent us here in the state of Georgia, and Josie Cruz running in the 4th District of Georgia. Tonight, our topic will be covering the Supreme Court and its recent rulings and how they affect the United States at large. Throughout history, we have all learned, and it has been well documented, that the Supreme Court is a highly contested and argumentative platform. However, we are now experiencing a conservatively led Supreme Court that is defending us in multiple realms as the American citizens. Join us tonight as we journey in the round table, as we discuss the issues that matter the most to you. Derrick, tonight I would like to start with you. The Supreme Court's ruling came out. Trump hailed the Supreme Court's ruling and how it pertained to school choice for our average everyday citizens and our parents that want a better way of life for their children. What say you about the ruling of the Supreme Court to allow school choice as a constitutional right?
Man, I am elated that a way was found to unravel the Department of Education. I'm sure, Danny, being well read like you are, you remember the case, and there were a number of cases, but particularly this one struck me because this mother actually was sent to prison for having her daughter to attend a better school that she drove her to, did everything necessary in order for her to get to a place where her daughter, could get a better education. So I applaud the Supreme Court for doing it. I hope, Danny, that we get to the point to where the Department of Education is abandoned altogether, because there's still one other avenue that needs to be fixed. And that is with the children whose parent don't give a darn about the education, and they basically turn the school into a daycare center, and the parents are not being held to account because they no longer send the child back home to the mom. They allow the child to stay for in-school suspension. It's just a day at the park. So there are a number of things that need to be done. And all of that, mind you, Danny, is because these parents aren't willing to do what they need to do for their own children. So it causes the rest of the kids to have to suffer.
That's an interesting intake, and Derrick, I can tell that that's rather pointed and personal, and that sounds as though it comes from experience. So now that we're kind of segueing based on experience, Josie, I'd like to come to you for just a brief minute. Your paralleled experience coming from Venezuela, becoming a United States citizen, you have an intricate background, a very thoughtful perspective that most of us lack. Those of us that were raised here and we battled the blue versus the red, the South versus the North constantly in our lives. And you come from the perspective of battling to become a citizen of this nation. How does this impact your belief in the American country and the faith in our judicial system for the Supreme Court to defend our educational ensemble? And second question to you, Josie, is what is the difference between our education here and the education that you were rescued from?
All right, so I think I'm going to answer both in one because it got a lot to do. The decision of the Supreme Court about school choices, I think is very good, and it is positive for those parents who do really care about their children's education. When I compare the education here in the United States with the education back in the country where I came from, the education over there is a standard. Is everybody's having the same education. At one point, the same step that we're taking here to move outside the school, like skills classes, like teaching the children and the teenagers skills or something to do with their hand. They were taken off the school system. So everybody was appointed to study one common core, like we call here common core. I don't remember how they call it back over there, but one common core, everybody were going through, and everybody was supposed to be going straight to university. So that gap between university and high school, this one here, was neglected. And this is exactly what we're seeing in here in United States. Why America have to bring people from other countries to cover the gap in between the skills, like for example, plumbers, air conditioning, all this work, how we call this skill, right? The nurses, all this in between. America, it's like sometimes I think, did America copy Venezuela way of education, or Venezuela copy America way of they did the education here? But since I've been here since 1993, I remember back on the 90s when Clinton took over, I remember high schools having courses at nighttime, and also for the high schooler, like plumbing, fixing cars, air conditioning, all that. But when Bush, half of the way of Bush era, all those extra programs from school disappeared. It started getting closing. And with Obama, it went all the way off. So the difference between America education and Venezuela, in somehow, I could say, back in those days, Venezuelan education was good, but today it's as bad as American education in some of the schools, like, for example, in the district that I'm running for. Schools here 20, 30 years ago used to be A+ schools. Now, today, are F, and they are failing. A lot of schools here in the district, specifically in the area of DeKalb County. So that is a red flag right there that is showing us the common core, and putting all the children going to one school, having the same education is not working. So as a parent, parents need to choose. Parents know their children. Me as a parent know this child have this skill, this child have this kind of skill, and this child have this kind of skill. And then it depends on how you know your children and how they function. You're supposed to put them in the school of the choice that's gonna benefit them so they can develop and they can be part of what I can do for the country, and not what the country will do for me.
And Josie, that is an impressive display and response in comparison. I think it's an eye-opener for most of our viewers. And from there, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this evening, I'm hoping that you're going to stay tuned in. That is the beginning of the battleground that's going to be tonight's discussion, discussing the decisions about the Supreme Court over the last month, and the placards that they have taken to defend and stand for the American people. But for just a moment, I would like to lean a little bit outside of the conversation, and I would like to welcome Hank Sullivan to the show. Hank, it's always good to see you. Thank you for being here again tonight. And Mr. Hank is an esteemed scholar. He's a writer and very much an entrepreneur and businessman. He joined us last week on the show and was very much a contributor. And I want to take a moment to give him about 10 minutes to share with us his newest observations and the things that matter to him the most. So Hank, the stage is yours. You're on mute, Hank. I got to get you off the mute. There we go.
Hear me?
There you go, sir. We got you.
I'm still new to Zoom, so y'all bear with me. Well, I don't know if this matters to me the most, but this is what came up this morning. Somebody sent me a link to a video and urged me to watch it, and I didn't have to watch it for more than a couple of minutes when all of a sudden they started talking about Covi-Pass. The Covi-Pass. Now I think most people are understanding that this COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic that we're having is not normal, to say the least. And I think most people are sensing that there's more to this than perhaps just a crazy flu virus that's going around that just happens to have hit the world right here in 2020 during the election campaign cycle. But what I wanted to show you is this this document right here. Can you see that?
Yes.
This is, I'll just read it to you because it's hard to show you, but what we have is a plan that's being executed in front of our eyes. We're seeing that, first of all, we're hit with this pandemic. And then secondly, we're being not asked, but in many ways forced. Like if you go to work, they're making you wear a mask. So a lot of people are wearing a mask voluntarily, but it's all about the mask. And people are wearing these masks sometimes for 8 hours a day or more. I see people wearing these masks alone in a vehicle, driving from one place to another. I saw a guy the other day that I thought was kind of funny. He's driving and he's got this mask on and he's the only one in the car and the mask is not covering up his nose. I mean, this is how unthinking it is for people to just start putting on these masks. They're told to put on masks and they're responding and they don't even know why they're doing it. They think they're protecting themselves. And then there's people say, no, this is not for protecting you. This is for protecting other people from you. Well, I'm okay. I don't need to protect you from me because I'm okay. So anyway, it's insane. So they've set us up to think that we're supposed to be wearing masks. And this is all over the world. And it just surprises me how people are so gullible to imagine that this is the key. There's only one way for this virus to end, and that is it's got to run its course. It's just like every virus that's ever been in the world. You cannot outrun the virus. You can't devise ways to fool the virus. The virus is going to do what the virus is going to do, one way or the other. So they've created a situation where everyone is being told they've got to wear masks after they were told that they didn't have to wear masks. And then now they're told they have to wear masks, but then it's not to protect them, it's to protect other people. But then it's to protect you because it says on the box, it's to protect you. So I mean, there's just no good information about any of this. And when you encounter a situation where there's no good information available and that all the information collides with itself and conflicts with itself, something's going on here and it's not what they say. So eventually what will happen is people will get tired of wearing these masks. I don't care if you're the most staunch advocate for wearing a mask. After you've been wearing a mask for 8 or 10 hours a day, after about 30 days or so, you're going to get really tired of wearing that mask. And finally, you're just going to say, I think I'll do without the mask today. And maybe I'll do it tomorrow. And then next thing you know, everybody starts losing the mask. And then everybody gets tired of the mask and the mask go away. So they have the next step. The first thing is we've had a problem. That's the virus. Then the reaction is we got to wear this mask. Then the third thing is because we get tired of the mask, they're going to give us the solution for not wearing the mask, but dealing with the problem. And that is this Covi-Pass. They have devised a digital health passport that they're going to import into our thinking, that this is a way that we can stay healthy and not have to wear the mask. They're going to want us to download an app so they can track us wherever we go, and they can track the people that we come in contact with without having to hire contact tracers to do that work. It's going to be in, we'll download it, and it'll become part of what we do every day, where we'll be interacting with this Covi-Pass digital health transport, digital health passport with built-in patented technology with the seal of excellence from the European Commission and being used by United Nations projects. This is to end, this is end-to-end secure return to work protocol. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, I guess you're showing me that. So this is so that you can return to work. This is how it works. As a secure digital health passport, Covi-Pass links and displays a certified COVID-19 test result to the user's health and immunoresponse. User's health and immunoresponse using a secure biometric gateway, allowing individuals to return to work safely. So you got to have this to prove that you're healthy in order to be able to go back to work. Covi-Pass, biometrically accessed on a mobile phone or held on a key fob or an RFID, provides a unique authenticated gateway for government or health services and businesses to ensure a safe work environment. So we're going to go from masks to these Covi-Passes. It is and it is powered by these people who have from VCode. So at the same time that we're doing that, then they're revving us up. Oh, this is what the app is going to look like on your phone. So, and on it, it's going to say, let's see, the Covi-Pass is a secure digital health passport which displays your COVID-19 test history and your immunoresponse and other relevant health information. So this information, your health information, is going to go on this, regardless of privacy laws. It's going to go on this so that your employer can verify that you have adapted to the protocols to make sure that you're not going to bring COVID into the work environment. So these people,
let me step in and ask you a two-part question here. So my first question would be, in your opinion and based on your research, what would this look like when an employee refuses? And second, what's next? If this is where we're starting with the Covi-Pass, how far is this thing going to go? I mean, what say you? What is your thought?
Well, two things. I guess it's going to depend on the employers, but you know, the government has their ways of making employers do things that employers might not want to do in the first place. But and that is, they give them tax breaks, they give them incentives to adapt to this program. I don't really know exactly what they would do to require the employers to do this, but it's so much beyond for where the employers are. This is going into the other thing that these people are involved with is digital currencies. So what their purpose is with all of this is to get you into their system in the first place. Well, that's what this does. But once you're in the system, they're going to offer you options. Well, if you want to go to a movie, first of all, you got to be able to prove that you're healthy. But then second of all, you got to pay for it out of this. So it's rolling one right into the next, right into the next. So you're dealing with a technology that revolutionizes electronic transactions with its versatile technology. So this is all one big program. It just rolls from the virus hit, then people wearing masks. They don't like the mask. They offer them the solution. The solution offers options. The options are things that make it easy for you to transact your life. And plus, then it might start off to where before you go into the movie, they say, well, you can pay for it with your Covi cash. You can pay for it that way. Or or you can pay cash. But then eventually they'll just go, no, we're not going to take cash anymore. We're going to take only Covi-Pass. So you've got to be in this system in order to conduct your life. The next thing is they'll have a guy at the grocery store, and he'll be standing at the door, and he'll be saying, he'll be waiting for you to show him that you're up to date. You've had your examination lately, that you're up to date with your COVID tests. And then he's going to say, okay, well, you can come in now, but if you're not up to date with this, you can't go in to buy groceries. So where are you going to buy groceries? The only way you're going to be able to buy groceries is on the black market. So this whole system just made criminals out of people who are simply conducting normal transactions, or would like to conduct normal transactions, as we always have. So this, and then the next thing is it tracks every step of your journey. It tracks every step of your journey. So you went from the virus to wearing the mask, to hating the mask, to adapting to another system that allows you to still engage in commerce, still go to work. Then they make you pay for things out of that same system, and then they're tracking everything that you do. And this is all out of the same website that starts off with this Covi-Pass. So they're putting out the entire system here for you to be able to see what they're doing. It says that, and it has endless possibilities. It's all right here for you. So instant purchases, media content delivery, electronic benefit transfer, data transfer. So the EBT cards, data transfer, ID verification, transport tickets, room access, vehicle access, membership verification, loyalty schemes, credit checks, end-to-end supply chain management, product authentication, anti-counterfeiting. So yeah, once this system is rolling, then regular cash, that's going to be counterfeit. This is going to be the currency right here. And once they control the currency in the cloud, then they can control you, because if you do something they don't want, all they got to do is turn off your account in the cloud.
So Hank, let me jump in for a minute, and I'm having to refrain myself as the host of this show and not run off into my own thing, but I want to encourage the panelists to join in here. And I want to go to Derrick specifically because of his background being a man of the cloth and a pastor. Derrick, this sounds to me like the ultimate in the conspiracy theories of the Christian church in the book of Revelations. This sounds like, to me, the gateway to introduce the end times and the Antichrist. What say you?
Well, so we are always forewarned. I said to Hank last week, I told him he is a prophet. And I had shared a video with him from another pastor who spoke on some things that he had to figure out. And I said to Hank, fortunately, people like you and I, we didn't need all of that to understand what's going on. Mm-hmm. So the things that Hank just rattled off can all be found, not just in Revelations, but going back to Daniel and the New Testament, the Gospels, the words of Christ, the words of Paul, Peter. So Hank is over there holding up a sheet of paper with a cell phone on it, and he just rattled off a system for the total control over your life.
Yes.
That ought to scare you. And I just got through saying on my show earlier, if you think the government is not capable, just go back and do a little history research. And Hank was engaged in the conversation with me with some other people on the situation about Abraham Lincoln. And I had to tell a guy, are you going to be a knuckle dragger all your life and never evolve to a level of understanding these things that are as plain? Well, I put it this way. It's as plain as the nose on everybody's face. I know that's on Zoom because that's why we're here doing it. So I can't speak for everybody else, but some of the things that I hear people say and do, and so what Hank said, it does not surprise me. I have read it in the Bible before, and prior to the internet coming of age, I might have had some doubts or some question marks because everybody wondered how would that happen. Mm-hmm. And when the internet came of age, and I was right there on the forefront of it, I said, this is going to be the means by which God shall be able to go in and have his word preached and taught to everyone. And understand something. Even though Hank may not have spoke a scripture, Hank spoke about scripture.
So
let me tell you one other thing, Danny. You used a term that they use, and I just want to point that out. You used the term gateway. This is what it says, that this Covi-Pass biometrically accessed on a mobile phone or held on a key, and it's showing you finger with a fingerprint. So there are a lot of different ways to do this. Provides a unique authenticated gateway for government and health services and businesses to ensure a safe work environment. So that's where this is going. They're trying to make this ubiquitous. This is their plan all around the world, not just in our country, but everywhere.
Right, and I dare not, Hank, go off into, again, my resume and whatnot. I'm here to be your host, but trust me when I tell you, this conversation fires me up. Being a man with a background in Homeland Security, the government service that I've been in, I see the alarm, I see the bell, and nothing you guys have said do I disagree with. But I think there's a layer in which this should go even further in the dialogue and conversation. I do have to remind to the panelists that we are here to get back on topic with the Supreme Court for tonight's discussion, but this segues into the Supreme Court. So let's talk about the constitutionality of what you're discussing and what are the people's rights to be able to stop it. Ms. Josie Cruz, in the case that, let's just say this technology were in the hands of the rulers of Venezuela and other nations in South America, what would this technology be used for, honestly, down in South America? And I want you to be as graphic and vivid as you can to paint the picture for the American people that we're not far away.
I got all news for you. They already implemented in Venezuela what we call over there the Tascon list. That means that every person who was member of that list could go to the store and buy whatever they need. Whoever was not in that list, they couldn't go and buy anything from the store. So whoever was not in the list, who got the identification from the current political party, they were the ones who were benefited from buying something. So after the Tascon list came another list, and every time a different list with different expanding the blacklist, basically. Okay, the blacklist. And when you were describing, Hank, passport to buy and this, it reminds me right away Venezuela. Today, I believe they are doing it with the Bitcoin. Since Venezuela money it's not worth it. It's not worth. It's nothing. A lot of Venezuelans are using the Bitcoin, and they are using Facebook. You know that there is an application on Facebook that you can transfer money from your family member to another through Facebook. You know that, right? Okay. So a lot of Venezuelans are using Facebook. The media are using the Bitcoin. But what is surprised me is at the end you were talking about authentication as a gateway, right? And when you say that word, Hank, gateway, right away I was thinking on CERNA. And CERNA, when you talk about CERNA, what they're doing over there in Europe, they're talking about open gates. Okay, so a gateway to control the population. I do know that China control the CCP in China. They control the population through their phone. They do everything through their phone. Bank and transaction, everything is on their phone. Yes or no, Hank? So here in the United States, I refuse to use my cell phone to put my account. I refuse to use my wallet. I refuse to give out that information. I'm not going to be using that. But in the other hand, I'm thinking, okay, if this is coming from the United Nations, implemented here in United States with American, what is going to happen with HIPAA? Because that's a law. Each state has HIPAA.
Well, I can tell you the answer. Yeah, the answer is that you don't have to join this system. You just have to join this system if you want to eat. You see, they don't make it mandatory, but they make it so onerous on anyone not to be in the system. You can create your own financial system, and you can barter if you want to, but they're going to make it so onerous on anyone that you're going to do it regardless. Plus,
so that will be functioning. That will be implemented very, I believe, strongly in big cities, because people in cities, they don't have a backyard with vegetables, food, and the cows and the chicken, and to live a life self-sufficient. So we are in a big trouble.
But a lot of people will do it because they think, God, this is great. Oh, and the next step is when they don't do it on your phone anymore, but they put the chip in your hand or in your forehead.
That's the next step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
and then
I'm glad Hank just said the chip in the hand and the forehead. And Josie, I want to come back to you with that. But with the chip in the forehead, Hank, you're obviously making a reference to biblical teachings in the Christian church. And so I want to stay with Josie for a minute, because Josie has a very experienced background in dealing with this system already implemented in South America. And I want to take it further. Josie, has there been discussions down south, one, about chipping hands and foreheads, and two, is it being taught to the people of Venezuela the dangers of doing so in a biblical way?
They already are using what we call, like I explained before, the social media. They know about the chip, here in the hand or in the skin. They don't talk too much about the forehead. Venezuelan ladies, they are too beautiful to put something in the head. So they're probably going to be using it on the hand or, on the skin. But as whatever happened in the United States is like a domino effect. If that is going to be implemented here, for sure it's going to be implemented down south, in the Middle East, in the West, and in the East. So biblically, yes, there is a lot of Christians, following the prophecies, and like Reverend Derrick explained earlier, when Han was talking, he was talking biblically without he saying the apocalypses, the Revelation chapters and the Daniels and Matthew. So Venezuelans, yes, we already passed that. Cuba, yes, they already went through that situation. Only certain people can eat, other people cannot eat. For example, in Cuba and in Venezuela, whoever is opposed to the government or what they call dissident, they are not allowed to eat. They are not allowed to sell food to them. So they have to go either into the black market, or most of them are put in jail. And jail time in those countries, we're talking about 10, 20 years. And while they are serving in jail time, they are taking the blood out of them. They are trying to see what organs are compatible with some big high pay donor seekers, and so on. It's whatever you see is happening in China, it already happening in Cuba, in Venezuela is happening now too, with the blood, with the transfusion, with the organs, with the prostitution, with the human trade, all that. Sadly, but yes.
Well, folks, this conversation is deep, it's rooted, and I want to continue this conversation. Leaning a little bit to the right here in our schedule, I want to make sure that we get enough time with everybody on the panel that we have for this evening. Right now, I would like to take a minute to welcome Catherine back. Catherine, I'm glad to see that we didn't run you off in our last visits, but Catherine Bernard is an attorney and represents very well the citizens of the state of Georgia, dealing with the state legislator and the state house. She follows very closely to what happens up there in our Gold Dome and holding people accountable. And so, Catherine, we thank you for that. But to catch you up on speed, we were talking about the decisions of the Supreme Court and how they apply to the land. Recently, over the last 30, 45 days, there's been some historic rulings and some that have been tossed around and kind of fell short of where we thought they should be. But in that conversation, we've stepped forward and joined by Mr. Hank Sullivan. Hank brought up the Covi-Pass and the application, which intentionally and internally makes us all digital entities. So that being said, I know that you've got your spot this evening, but I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to what we're talking about and give you a second to segue with us. What do you think the legalities are in those of us that want to refuse this Covi-Pass to go to work or to buy groceries or hell, simply to exist here in the United States of America as free citizens?
I think that's a tough question, and it's the one that I've been trying to address with a lot of folks with the Justice Happy Hour that I've been doing on Friday nights ever since April 3rd, as we started to realize, whoa, this, quarantine thing is really, settling in. How are we going to talk about liberty and justice for all when all of our neighbors are angry at Trump for not being fascist enough? That was the really troubling thing. If you remember, back 3 months ago, all the people who were, convinced Trump was a fascist, all of a sudden, how dare he not establish martial law and a military dictatorship? And, so you really just see the intellectual bankruptcy of what we're dealing with there. But, one of the insights that I think really emerged from those discussions is, it's not necessarily a battle with the government over whether or not the Covi-Pass is going to be held constitutional, because honestly, I don't have a lot of faith in the Supreme Court. It's a very political entity. It's operating with a lot of years of precedent that I think, go all the way back to some problematic precedents to begin with. So I think when we're talking about questions about, what we will accept, it's, what will we and our neighbors accept rather than what can we convince the government of? Because honestly, I think the government is going to try to do bad stuff and it's going to try to get worse. It is just going to be more and more control, as things spin further and further out.
Wow. And I've taken some notes, and I hope that everybody else on the panel is taking some notes. But at this time, Catherine, I'm going to turn it over to you, let you come in with your topic for the night, your conversation, and then obviously bridge back into this such an important topic that all of us are on. And hopefully we can come up with some points that allow our listeners and our viewers to find some sense of hope in the existence of our candidates for the United States Senate and for the United States Congress.
Well, I've always got faith in Derrick Grayson, the minister of truth. He tells it like it is. And, that's what gives me so much hope in this world, of how crazy 2020 is. Am I ever going to do a jury trial ever again? I am honestly worried about that at this point. Just as an insight for folks in Georgia, we did have a Superior Court judge die yesterday in Newton County. And apparently there's a number of COVID infections at the courthouse. And this was one of the circuits that was insisting on having court, even though the Supreme Court, Justice Melton has been issuing emergency orders. And so, it's interesting when I'm thinking about the pandemic from the perspective of like a civil liberties, government was looking for any excuse for a lockdown, it absolutely was overblown from that perspective. But courts have always been a very dangerous place, in terms of like people are always hacking and coughing and it's disgusting in there. And people don't have a choice of whether or not to come. So if you notice, a lot of the little outbreaks we've had have been around courthouses. And so it really brings up like, how are we going to have jury trials if people are too scared to come into the courthouse? And frankly, especially for someone who might be, have a compromised respiratory system or immune system, I can't tell them, come crowd into a place with a bunch of other people. So I share that as kind of like the direction that things are going in the courts in Georgia right now, which is interesting. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight was actually suggested by Derrick, because, in the context of this Elijah McClain case that we've heard so much about out of Aurora, Colorado, where the young man who was just, walking home from the store, literally had just, purchased his snacks and walking home from the store. Somebody thinks he looks funny, calls 911, police come, pounce on him, choke him, inject him with ketamine, and he dies. And so we were talking about this, I think, on a Facebook page with somebody who was very suspicious of the narrative, thinking, oh, well, he must have done something. The police wouldn't have just jumped on him for no reason. And of course, that's when I always quote Solzhenitsyn from the Gulag Archipelago, where he says, that was, how the Philistines spoke in those days. He must have done something to deserve it. In our country, they don't arrest people for nothing. That's how it always is back. People always, oh, there we go, killing of Elijah McClain. And so in the context of this discussion that we were having, some people tried to make it about race. And the fact is, what happened to Elijah McClain has happened to countless other people, of all races. And so I just wanted to bring up a case that I learned about. It happened back in 2006. I learned about it when I first became a public defender, and it happened in Spokane, Washington. And it was a man in his 30s, Otto Zaim, Zehm. And he was a janitor, had a job, I think, at a school in the neighborhood. And he was going to the ATM and then to the convenience store. And he had some trouble at the ATM. And so again, some girls, called 911 because they thought, oh, this man looks suspicious at the ATM. So the police come, into the convenience store. You see them on the camera and just tackle this man to the ground, choke the life out of him, force a rebreather mask onto him. And, meanwhile, he's just holding a Pepsi and like, what, he doesn't know what's going on. He's crying for his mom, just an awful, horrific, no human being should ever have to die like that. No innocent person should ever be in that situation. And yet, we are paying these men to beat and choke the life out of this innocent person. And so I just, I bring up that case because I think it's so important, to push back on this narrative that everybody who, that the way to not get hurt by the police is, don't break the law. Well, it's true. Some people like Rayshard Brooks, like if he had made more responsible choices about drinking, then, he wouldn't have been in the situation that he was in. But then you really do have these just truly innocent victims like Elijah McClain, like Otto Zaim, like Kelly Stewart, like David Hooks, like Katherine Johnston. And so I think it's so important, especially as the BLM folks try to make it, all about race, oh, every time a Black person is killed, it's racism. Well, no, like that's just not how it is. Like when human beings interact violently with each other, there's a lot of different factors into, who is the righteous party in that exchange. And so to me, it takes away from victims like Elijah McClain and Otto Zaim if you put them in the same category as a Rayshard Brooks, or even somebody who did something more dangerous and brought, aggression on themselves from the police. So that was just what I wanted to mention tonight in light of the discussion with Derrick, that, as we, in the police accountability movement and the conversation, I think we really do have to hew to conduct matters. It's not race, it's not anything else, but it doesn't make you a racist to say some people's conduct was completely blameless and some people made choices that made their confrontation more likely. And so I just think personal responsibility, it's such an important, concept to carry through in our activism. And that's what I wanted to share tonight.
So Catherine, I'm gonna dare and make an attempt to pull 3 topics together in a segue, and I'm gonna throw it back at you.
Awesome.
So we've been talking about the Supreme Court, we've been talking about Covi-Pass, and now we're talking about something that's very interesting that you bring up, and that is conduct. We're talking about, and you said previously that the Supreme Court wasn't necessarily a court that you have faith in. So
I'm sorry, I get pretty radical these days.
Well, at the same time, I got to ask, is the Michael Flynn thing politically motivated, or did they actually serve justice?
So I think it's a little of column A and a little of column B. Michael Flynn, the reason he was able to withdraw his guilty plea is because he had, a team of extremely powerful lawyers who pulled a lot of strings and made a lot of things happen. But fundamentally, he was the victim of the same process that, draws in countless people who are much less powerful, and they get pressured into, maybe even committing. I think you could argue that Michael Flynn was entrapped into what happened. Like when you look at the notes in, what the FBI agents are doing, it is not, we see criminal activity and we want to investigate it. It's here's how we can manufacture circumstances in order to, to get something prosecutable for our target. They're acting sort of like foreign intelligence agents rather than domestic law enforcement. And I'm kind of looking at Hank as I say this, because I know he's my Georgia Patriot Files guy, and he won't hesitate to call me out if I get anything wrong on that. And so I think, what happened, like Mike Flynn should have been able to withdraw his plea, but it shouldn't take being Michael Flynn to withdraw your plea when you have been subject to corrupt prosecutors. And we shouldn't have prosecutors just having this attitude of entitlement and lack of accountability, like, oh, we decide who's the criminal. We decide if we're just going to lock you up, and, you'll be lucky if you ever get to a jury.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Hank. So Hank, your turn in the hot seat. Let's spin this thing back around. So Catherine just said that essentially people's conduct should be something that is equated in the court. It's something that we should hold people to a standard in common language, right? Well, how does your Covi-Pass work with that? Does your Covi-Pass now pass the standard, or is that the way we're going?
Let's get back more into, I'd like to respond to the Michael Flynn situation. It seems like to me what we're dealing with here is a systemic problem in our court system, to where the criminals are on the wrong side of the bar. Criminals are the guys who are in charge, and the innocent people are the ones that they're bringing in to try to railroad into prison sentences for political reasons. So when that's going on, and you've got judges who are in there for life, then the only thing that you can do is to impeach them. That's all you can really do, because that seems pretty obvious to me that with the Flynn case, obviously he didn't do anything, and obviously they tried to railroad him, and they tried to bankrupt him, and they threatened to throw the book at his son for this, that, and the other thing. And so he's trying to protect his family. He's trying to protect their way of life, and they railroad him into agreeing to a guilty plea. Well, I'm sure that Catherine knows of hundreds of instances where you've got law enforcement officers who are not dealing straight up with the folks that they're proposing that have committed crimes, and they are railroading them into guilty pleas. but that's what's going on there. So we have in this country a systemic criminality on the government side. And I will say this, I've said it 100 times, or as I've been saying it ever since Donald Trump decided to run for president. We only have one chance of really getting our country back. And if it's not Trump, then we don't have a chance at all. So we've got to get behind behind Donald Trump, and we've got to get Republicans into office to back him. Now, if they don't back him, then there's nothing else we can do. But all we can do is play this out and support Donald Trump as we possibly can, because he's the only hope. You see what the government's doing here. You see the dishonesty, you see the illegality that's being perpetrated at practically every level of our law enforcement, in our courts, in the judiciary, in the Congress. So truly, we got one chance here, and if it's not Trump, we don't have any chances here. So there's no other solution here than for him to fix this and for us to get behind him and get him help in the Congress. That's all.
I love your critical thought and analysis on this topic, and I want to hold you to my previous question about, how does conduct get monitored by the Covi-Pass, and is that something that we could see in the future? But I want to come back to that, because right now we got to welcome Alex Johnson to the show. Alex, welcome back. Alex is also a representing attorney that fights for us here in Georgia without anybody really knowing that he's out there doing it, involved in lobbying and politics. And Alex, just to catch you up on what we've been talking about, the conversation started tonight with the Supreme Court and the decisions that it's made. Some of them fired up and on our side, some of them not so much. They haven't caught us where we need to be caught. And the conversation is spun out of that to where we've looked at this new Covi-Pass app, an application that essentially governs us, lest we govern ourselves. And Hank Sullivan has been gracious enough to share that with us. And we've gone through the legal recourse and conversation with Catherine, and we've talked with Derrick and Josie about their thoughts on the matter as it pertains to other areas. So I want to give you a second, Alex, just to jump in where we're at, and then I'm going to turn the mic over to you and let you discuss what it is that you came here for tonight already on your plate.
Good to see everybody tonight. It's been an interesting time with Supreme Court decisions. I do like focusing on some of the more positive things that have gone on. Specifically, I know the school choice decision is a big one, where government can't discriminate against religious institutions. I know that was a rather positive one. One thing that I wanted to just talk about or mention a little bit tonight, because it was a news article that really sort of got me. It was about a University of Kansas. It's touches a little bit on law, but it's also politics. Is that they were protesting the athletes there were going to be refusing to play anymore, based on the fact that another student, and this is at a public university, a student went and made some rather insensitive and sort of jerkish terrible comments regarding what happened to George Floyd, and they're demanding that he be kicked out of school or the athletes won't play, which to me it demonstrates a problem we're running into in the political sphere, which is that the people that are protesting and wanting some sort of political change don't actually realize that they're undermining their own rights when doing it. Because if a public institution could turn around and undercut what, they could discriminate on speech, that would mean that a public institution could then turn around and kick out the athletes for daring to stand with George Floyd or Black Lives Matter or anything else. So their own protesting and their own political stance of, the government needs to punish this person for their speech it's undermining what allows them to protest and speak without the government coming after them. And that's, I think that bodes very poorly for our political climate and culture, because it's just demonstrating that that people are pushing to undermine the Constitution in their own emotional reaction to current events. And that's, I mean, that makes me really concerned for the political health and future of our country. On the other bright side, I mean, as many of you may know, I'm president of the Georgia Republican Assembly, and a lot of our members have done a good job undermining the establishment in Georgia. I mean, a lot of politicians here are very unaccountable, but the state committee meeting just a couple weeks ago, which replaced our state convention this year, had some good outcomes. We have a state platform now, the Republican Party does, which means that Republicans can actually be held accountable to what the party believes. That was actually instituted and pushed by one of our members, Brant Frost. A lot of good delegates were elected to the national convention this year due to the fact that a lot of good principled people were elected onto the state committee by the Republican Assembly. So a couple good things here in the state of Georgia. Trying to reform the state GOP, but that's where we are. So I guess that's a little bit of good political news. And with that, I'm done.
Well, I'm glad that somebody's out there working with the GOP, and I'll reserve my personal campaigning history in dealing with the GOP in South Georgia to myself. Maybe we'll talk about that at a future time. But bringing this up, we're on this panel, Alex, where we're talking with Derrick Grayson. We're looking at Grayson's run for Senate. We're looking at Josie Cruz's run, up here in Georgia 4. We're looking at all of these historical movements that are taking place, and we're bridging this communication, this conversation that we have every Wednesday night here at the table. And I would challenge you for a moment, if there was one way that you could bridge everything together that's taking place, the science, the psychology, the emotional side, the legal side, the spiritual side, everything that we are facing right now, how would you wrap this up into a ball in 5 minutes and explain it to the people watching tonight? What do they need to be doing to make a difference?
I mean, to make a difference, people need to be informed and involved. I mean, ultimately, people need to take ownership of the country that they're living in, and of not just politics, but of the law, of what politicians are doing. I think that's what it really comes down to, because a lot of people don't realize that the way that if people aren't happy with law enforcement, that's due to politicians. That's due to the way that the laws are written. If they don't like what judges are doing, it comes down to the way the laws are written. If they don't like what's going on in the world, in politics, I mean, it really comes down to them being involved and holding the politicians accountable. And a lot of people, I think, get afraid. I think they see protesting, they see people upset, and they cower away from being involved. And that's not the solution. I mean, I hear poll numbers coming out regarding the presidential race, and I don't necessarily believe them, but I do think that a lot of people are intimidated by everything going on, and they refuse to be involved. I think that a lot of that, I mean, from obviously I have a biased perspective because I'm president of the Georgia Republican Assembly, but being involved in principled groups where numbers can have influence matter, because there's no one out there except for grassroots volunteer groups that are going to be trying to cause political change. I mean, on the left, a lot of those groups are very well funded. It's a career, it's a paid career. And people need to get involved with groups. I mean, honestly, in Georgia, I'd say the Georgia Republican Assembly and other groups like it across the country, we are part of a national group, but you have to be involved and know how to put pressure on the politicians, how to go and learn about what the legislation is and call them out. Because if we don't, I mean, we'll lose everything. I mean, if the emotional left wins, we will end up with socialism. That's where we're headed.
Wow, such amazing and powerful words, and I think they deliver well, Alex. So thank you for that. Derrick, I'm gonna bring you back in. So we've tapped on a lot of stuff. You've been over there on the sideline listening, patiently waiting to come back in, but I want to put you in the hot seat for just a minute. We've covered a lot of different topics, but the main topic tonight is about the power of the Supreme Court. Do they work for us or do they not? The rulings that we agree with that make us happy versus the landmark, as Alex said, the cases that don't really side with us, right? So we know that school choice is great. We know that Flynn's case is great, but we can come back and analyze DACA a little bit more, or their abortion position. where we were hopeful at a time, and it looked like possibly they would actually turn into a conservative court when it came to abortion and restore, our lands. But at the same time, Derrick, while we're talking about all of this, we have the Covi-Pass, which seems to violate everything in my mind that I believe to be my constitutional rights, which is going to be piggybacked with forced vaccinations. It's kind of obvious that it's there. So it seems to me that the power of the Supreme Court might not be what we think it is. Derrick, what say you?
As far as the Supreme Court goes, Danny, I don't even think this will be an issue for the Supreme Court. This is a private business putting out their product that will be leveraged to have merchants, those that trade in money, to come together and participate in that system. And as Hank alluded to, leaving you with the choice: eat, black market, or starve. So that won't even make it to the courts. And when you consider this, it is only about half, and I'm saying half because they're saying that that's who voted for Hillary Clinton. That half, that uninformed half. The other half won't stand for it if it became a constitutional question. But people, I could see them being forced into it or manipulated into making that choice simply by the government saying, hey, if you want to go back to work for your particular employer, and we know how employers will do when it came to shutting down every government, and the government employs a great many people, then you need to be a part of this system. So I could go on and on about the doom and gloom, but I was very pleased to hear what Alex has said. Now, I want to make a distinction first. Alex is the president of the Georgia Republican Assembly. Please do not confuse him with those people down there with the Georgia, the Georgia Republican Committee, the RNC here in Georgia. Alex saw the corruption in the Georgia Republican Party and decided to do something about it with the GRA. So I wanted to make that clear, on Alex's behalf. But Alex pointed out something that people get upset with me all the time. All the time. When I talk about bad cops, it is almost as if they don't even hear the first word, bad. And all they hear is cops. And they attack me. When I say the word rhinos, oh, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. And what did Alex say? Alex said the politicians. We are responsible for those politicians. I could play you a video right now of Doug Collins being exposed by Tucker Carlson, who works for a network, Fox, that is complicit in the madness in their own ways because they don't do enough to expose those politicians that Alex talked about. And Tucker made one thing very clear in a video when he talked about all that Trump experienced in the first 2 years, him running and when he in his first year in office. He said politicians, but specifically Republicans, they had the power to shut it all down. And I tell Scott, these are now my 3 favorite words or 4 favorite words, but they did not. That may have been 5. Anyway, They did not. They did nothing. And someone just asked the question, are the Republicans going to stand up to the Democrats? Well, Hank said we've got to support Trump as much as we can. Well, we're going to do our part. We've been doing that. But the problem is, are we going to continue to elect and re-elect the politicians who appoint the judges, who do the things that undermine our Constitution, and who fight against Trump? And the last key point I'll make, Trump can't call out Doug Collins. He can't call out Mitch McConnell. He can't call out the leadership when they haven't attacked him. But Trump knows what they are doing. He knows that they are on the same side as the liberal Democrats, only doing just enough to make their supporters, I said their supporters because I wouldn't support them, think that they are doing a good job when they are not. Conservative voices have been silenced because of Rule 230. See Senator Mike Lee and Congressman Doug Collins on that and ask them what they have to say. You're going to get double talk. So in response to the Supreme Court, Trump is the first president in my lifetime being politically active when I actually cared to go in and bring in as many conservative judges as he has. I've seen no one else do it. The Supreme Court has been engaged time and time again in legislating from the bench, and that became so apparent with Roe v. Wade when they turned abortion into a birth control pill. And we have been going down the drain ever since. Catherine can even speak to no-knock search warrants, which are illegal here in the state of Georgia, but we use them anyway because they use them at the federal level where judges said, okay, to hell with the Constitution, let's make this happen. Forget about knock and announce. So, you know, in the short of it, we got to get Trump in, but we got to get people in there that are going to fight with Trump. Then we can start to deal with those judges when we have dealt with the politicians. But first, we have to deal with ourselves and educate ourselves to the truth, even if it's hurtful, even if it's my guy. We have to accept the fact that they have betrayed us. And we need to do something different and not out of fear. I'm sick of people telling me, man, I would love to vote for you, but I don't think you're going to win. I just say, thank you very much. And I keep on going. I'm done.
It seems to be a hot topic. I can't have you back because I don't think that you have enough. I can't have you back because you're not going to win, or these people that are going to take COVID and make the Covi app functional simply because they're looking for another stimulus check. So if there's an incentive or a benefit there, they've already been brainwashed. We'll give you the money if you'll just register, if you'll just file your taxes, or if you'll just put your banking account information. We'll send you $1,200 per person, $500 per child. And so we've already been preconditioned. So with this app, it leads to the next. Josie, I've been terrified to come to you in this conversation. Let me tell you something. Josie, I know good and well you have seen every bit of this, and you are probably going to be the subject matter expert for all of us when it comes to this topic. But Josie, I'm going to hand you the microphone for 6 minutes for you to let loose on all of this stuff, because I know you're getting ready to educate every single one of us.
Okay, Alex Johnson, I got a bad news for you. We are not in socialism anymore. We are experiencing hardcore communism. What we are experiencing now here in America is not socialism, it's communism, tearing down statues, controlling people's liberty. This is communism as its best manifestation. Second of all, what can we do? I'm going to be doing something during this weekend, and I'm calling for unity. And I know when I call for unity, I'm calling for Look, if we don't come and unify as an American, constitutionalists, patriots, Republicans, conservative group, Democrats for Trump, let's put it in there too. Why not? Right? Why not? They are Americans too. If we don't come and unite right now, we will have no country left. This is the moment to come and get united and work together. Back in the blue, every time there is somebody in the corner, protesting, showing support for the blue, every Republican, every conservative should be there in the corner, helping out and supporting the blue, supporting the Constitution. But everybody stay home. They don't want to go out there and get sweat, They don't want to sweat, We need to understand the party political game is over. It's done. We are in another stage. We have the communists in here already. It's not that they're coming and now Paul Revere telling you the communists, the socialists are coming. No. They are already here and we need to deal with them. Okay, what I'm calling is for unity. We need to unify so we can recover the country back. And like I said in another program, we're a little more with another kind of word, but this time I'm gonna behave myself and I'm gonna say it in a nice way and in a very educated way. We need to recover our country back from the communism. We need to leave our pettiness on the side for a little while, okay? We gotta leave our differences on the side for a little while we're kicking their behinds. When I'm talking about Antifa, the communists, the anarchists, the communist Democrats, the Nation of Islam, the government control. We need to kick their behind out of the country. And when we have recovered the country, then we can sit down. Okay, rhinos. Okay, conservative. Okay, Republicans. Okay, patriots. Okay, what's the difference? Why are we so divided? Now that we have the country, we have a country that we already defending, we can now deal with each other. Last night I said something different, a little more grotesque, but tonight I'm behaving. So you understand what I'm trying to say? We need to put all this, we need to have we need to have one common goal, just one, to unite all of us. That goal is we need to recover our country back from those anarchists, from those Antifa, from those Nation of the Islam who are behind all this movement, who are destroying our country. Now, Rashida Tlaib now is suing the education system in her state because she wants to take the flag of United States out of the school system because that offends some children who are not American. So for God's sake, we are paying the education for free. We're giving those kids and those parents education for free, and they want to tell us how we're gonna conduct our school system. No, because we can allocate that money and spending that money from the flag, and we can allocate it for halal food. You know what is halal? For food, they're trying to put the Jewish in there too. How you call the kosher food? It's like they are forcing Sharia law in the school system, but at the same time, when Christians trying to say something, okay, I want to pray in the school. No, you cannot mix religious with government. You follow what I mean? But they are using Sharia law with the school system, with the lunch and with this and with that. Later on, they're gonna force everybody to use mask and the how you call this part here? The cover to cover the head. Jihad?
Hajib.
That one. Yes. So right now, this is why I'm doing this on Saturday. I want every Republican, every conservative, everybody from Georgia, close to the area of District Number 4. We, Derrick and me, we are gonna have our kickoff campaign. Please come, everybody come. This is about unity. When Antifa starts seeing the Republican Party, the Patriots, the Conservative, the Democratic for Trump, every group for Trump, what is the significant for them is, damn, we couldn't achieve the division that we wanted from the beginning. They're gonna do exactly what Fidel Castro did in Grenada when America went over there. You know what they did? They run away from the island because they saw the patriots American coming and helping the island. That's what we need to do. We need to unify first. We need to unify under one goal, just one. We need to recover our country from communism. And I give kudos to Alex Johnson. You're doing a lot, honey. Keep going, but we need to clarify it now. We are not in socialism anymore. This is hardcore communism. Take it from me. I experience it. I see it. I can smell it from a mile away. Thank you.
Josie, thank you so much. And, I'm glad that we had a moment just to let you breathe. Because for us, we have to be honest, Josie. For us, these are confusing times. This is uncharted territory for us in our lifetime. And for you, this is very relevant. So I personally want to take a moment to thank you for being brave enough, one, to come to our country and make it your own and join us as our sister. Second, for you to be willing to stand up in opposition to the way that they try to govern things down there and make it very real for those of us up here. You are a true patriot, a friend of mine, and I thank you. For the next 2 minutes, I would like to rotate, next 6 minutes rather, I'd like to rotate. I want to start with Alex Johnson. I want to give you 2 minutes to do a wrap-up roll-up where you can just share in closing arguments. This has been a lot of conversation, so I just want to give you 2 minutes to do your thing. So Alex, if you'll kick off, and after that, we'll roll over to Catherine, and then we'll let Hank close out. So Alex, 2 minutes.
Well, I just appreciate everybody's perspectives on here and being on here today. I mean, I liked what Josie said about the fact that, I mean, we are approaching communism, and she's right. I mean, the fact we're in communism makes perfect sense because, I mean, the communists are the ones who want to start tearing down statues and destroying things. But I mean, I think there are a lot of people left that don't buy into that. I mean, I think there's some very small, loud groups that believe in that type of destructive behavior, but I think that we still have a lot of good Americans. I just think they aren't the ones being put on TV. They aren't the ones getting the attention from the media. And I think that that's what we all need to remember, is that ultimately we're the ones who can go to the voting booth. We're the ones who can be involved and influence politics and influence the media. It's just that ultimately we need to be organized to make that happen. The media doesn't pay attention to what they aren't paid to. They also don't pay attention to things that are calm and reasonable. They want to find the most extreme. It reminds me back during right after 9/11, where a church in Florida burned a Quran and it made international news. That church consisted of like 8 people, but it made international news. And that's what we're dealing with. There's a lot of propaganda, and I think that people need to be pay a lot of attention, be involved, be informed, and that's what we need to be doing. I appreciate all the people on here who are working hard.
Alex, tonight we thank you. Miss Catherine Bernard.
Well, I don't want to be too flip about it, but when I think about propaganda, I think we need to be making some propaganda, and not in the sense of anything dishonest or deliberately confusing. You know, we are on the side of liberty and justice and economic prosperity and, opportunity for all. So our propaganda has I don't know if it's an advantage or not, of being able to be based on truth. And so what I think is so powerful about this moment in history right now is that everybody is thinking about government control over their lives in a way that formerly, just certain segments of the population were feeling at any given time. Now, everybody has to think about, are schools going to be open? Am I going to send my kid back to school? Are they going to be slathering them in hand sanitizer that, kills all the good bacteria on their skin and gives them lifelong immune problems? These are issues that are very immediate to people's lives. And so I think, as advocates for freedom, it's hard to resist the "I told you so" temptation, the "where have you been for the past however many years?" But we've always got to remember, at some point we became enlightened too. And so we've got to extend that grace and understanding to those jumping on the bandwagon. But we've got to make sure we've got a really strong bandwagon for them to jump on. And so that's what prompted my little comment about the propaganda. But it does, when I was telling you about the story of Otto Zane, that's important to bring up in the context for Elijah McClain, because it really answers people who think this is all about race, or this is all about, trying to stoke division. Yes, it's true that the capital Black Lives Matters are Marxists who are bent on, cultural destruction, but there are tons of fantastic people who are affiliated with the movement who just want real justice. And so I think as long as we can present that positive vision of accountability and personal responsibility, let's take advantage of this time when people's minds might possibly be a little bit open to it, and make sure they see how liberty and justice are relevant to the concerns they already have.
Catherine, well said, well stated. I look forward to the next time, and to you as well. Tonight, we thank you. Mr. Hank Sullivan. You're on mute, Mr. Sullivan.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
There we go,
Being
sir.
the senior panelist here, and probably being the only one who can remember the Kennedy assassination, I'm going to try to give you the benefit of all of these years and what I'm seeing in a nutshell. What we're seeing in the world right now is not normal, and it's all related. Every one of these symptoms is absolutely related to every other symptom. But this is not America. America has been taken over. This is a grand attempt by a corporate fascist junta that is worldwide, that is trying to take over our country. And if Donald Trump had not done what he did and run for president to try to stop this, they would have done it. And everything that we're seeing right now, there would be absolutely no end to it. This is where we would be going, and there would be no recovery, no way out, no possible way out. And so I don't want anybody to be thinking that COVID is different than the problems in the courts. It's all the same thing. It's all being paid for with the same money. And it's all got the same goals in the end. And the goal is to subjugate the people of the world, including the people of the United States. And the United States is the big guy on the block. All they have to do is take over the United States. They can take over the rest of the world. And I just want to show you something in real time. We were talking about the Covi-Pass. In real time, I just received this. It says Michigan House passes human microchipping legislation. It says that they created a framework for microchipping humans. This is all part of the same story here. It's not anything different. This is not anything different than COVID and the masks and the lack of and likely a lot of the police problems that we're having, because a lot of times they're hiring people who have this predisposition that they're looking for, that they know are going to be bad cops, and they'll put bad cops out on the beat because they want chaos. This is the new world order, and that what they're looking for is out of chaos to create order. And the order that they want is for them to be on the top and for us to be completely subjugated. And that's what all of this is all about. We have one chance to fix it. And that is if our president, during the next 4 years, if we can get him elected, to be able to turn this thing back around and then hand it off to the next guy who can also do the same thing.
Mr. Sullivan, well said, very eloquently stated, and I could not agree with you more. And again, to you, sir, tonight, we thank you. To our legal panelist that has joined us tonight, we can't thank you enough. Your insight, your education, your inside knowledge, and the value that you bring to this conversation, I guarantee you, years from now, will still ring in the ears of those who desire liberty. On to our political candidates tonight, Ms. Josie Cruz and Mr. Derrick Grayson. I will allow you 2 minutes apiece to wrap it up. Let's shut this thing down and head to next Wednesday. So up first, ladies first, Ms. Cruz, 2 minutes.
Well, my closing statement is unify. We need to understand that communists, this group who are teaching our citizens, our fellow Americans to depend on government control, they will create a crisis, we will lead into a chaos, and the answer is going to be more government control. It's always like Hank just described it. He just described it a few seconds ago. So always remember, why is this crisis going on? It's gonna pass a little bit into a big chaos, and then the government comes with the solution. The communists create the crisis, the communists create the chaos and expands the chaos, and then they go, okay, the solution, we're gonna control you more. Please think about that. Thank you.
Josie Cruz, thank you so much out of your busy schedule for the United States Congress and everything you're doing in your personal business. Tonight, we and your constituents, thank you. Mr. Derrick Grayson, the floor is yours.
Okay. I'm just going to put a reminder. I said earlier that Trump cannot go after rhinos, and that's for one simple reason. If he were to, he would basically have no one. There are only a handful of people in DC and both houses that actually believe in the Constitution. And I believe that the people will elect Donald Trump in 2020. I believe he is going to win. But in order for that win to have a lasting impact, we need people, conservatives that believe in the Constitution, that will pass legislation that is lasting. Because once that legislation is made law and it's constitutional, stands the passage of time. That is our inheritance. That is something that we can count on. So Trump is as wise as a serpent, but he is as gentle as a dove because he has a heart for the people and a heart for this country. And people of like mind with me, we see that. And I still remember to this day when I had my conversation with Hank and I threw my hat in for Trump. So I see the difference. And I said back then that this is going to be a civil war. And Hank did an expose on that civil war earlier this year or late last year. So I close with that. It's Trump will do his part, but are you willing to do your part? And that's what this comes down to. And our part is putting some people up there that's going to stand in the gap with Trump. We need to be, and to use a biblical reference, we need to be to Trump what Aaron was to Moses.
Yes.
Well said, Mr. Grayson. And tonight, your constituents, I as your brother and your people, we thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, we have traveled around so many issues, not only locally in the United States, but around the globe. And the truth is we're all faced with a trying time that is hard to understand as a generalized society. But we were joined tonight by a legal panelist that will give you the insight and has shared with us their insight from the benches of courtrooms through the prosecution and the defense, all the way to the Supreme Court, outlining their positions as the law would define here in our land and the Constitution would provide. We have talked with our political activists and political candidates from Josie Cruz in the 4th District for the United States Congress here in the state of Georgia, and Mr. Derrick Grayson running for the United States Senate here in the state of Georgia. Their input and what they have shared with us for us to take away tonight. Don't fear. The Bible says, do not fear, for I am with you, even though until the end of time. Know this, your actions now, today, matter more than ever. a president that comes with conservative values and is sworn to defend our Constitution and what our Constitution was founded on. We are calling you to join us. Join us politically, join us in activism, join us in supporting our candidates for office, join us in defending our president, join us in defending our Constitution, join us in defending our liberties. And tonight I challenge you to stand up, take hold of your own life, and join us in defending each other, mentally, emotionally, physically, and dare I say, spiritually. From down here south in the heartbeat counties of Georgia, my name is Danny Ellison, and it has been my pleasure to be your host. We wish you good night.
Good night.